So the first thing I'm gonna do, I pull up the instructions and it says task 1, make predictions. But before I make any predictions, I need to pick 4 different data sets and record the title of the column below. So I'm gonna go to my Excel spreadsheet of data and I'm gonna look at all of the different data there is. Okay, we'll make it big screen so we can see all of it. So we have percentage of population over 65 years old, obesity rate, Obama voters of 2012, median income, poverty rate, white population percentage, non-English speakers, gender wage gap, same-sex households, teen birth rate, fertility rate, chlamydia rate, some pretty fun ones, teacher average salary, SAT participation rate. And so I am just going to pull a couple of these titles, and that's the data I'm going to use throughout this. Okay, so I am going to pick, let's say, teen birth rate as one. So that's going to be my data set 1. So in there, I'm going to write teen birth rate. Okay, I'm going to go over to data set 2. Let's pull another one. Let's say SAT participation rate. Okay, we'll pick another. Let's do Starbucks locations, how many Starbucks there are in that area. So Starbucks locations. And data set 4, maybe I'll do military recruitment rate. Okay. So these are what I have chosen. And so ideally now I'm going to think about if I plotted data set 1 versus data set 2, do I think that 1 will affect 2 in a positive or negative way? Okay, so if we look over here, strong positive correlation would be that if 1 goes up, 2 also goes up, right? A weak correlation, if 1 goes up, 2 goes up a little bit. A strong negative correlation would be if 1 went up and 2 went down, right? Or if 1 went up, or if 1 went down and 2 went up, same, and etc. Okay, so I'm just gonna think, well, okay, teen birth rate, the more people giving birth, probably fewer people taking the SAT. So if teen birth rate goes up, I'm gonna say that the SAT participation rate will go down. And so I'm going to write negative, okay? Between data set 1 and data set 3, maybe if there are more teen births, there are more Starbucks, there's a higher population. So I'm gonna venture and say positive. Why not? Okay, let's see, data sets 1 and 4. So that's teen birth rate versus military recruitment rate. I feel like if you have more people giving birth, maybe fewer people joining the military. So I'm gonna go with negative. But this is all opinion based, it's what you think, okay? So between data sets 2 and 3, so SAT participation rate and Starbucks locations, I'm gonna go with no correlation. Between SAT participation rate and military recruitment rate, the more people taking the SAT, the fewer people joining the military, so I'm gonna go with negative. And then Starbucks locations versus military recruitment rate, I'm gonna go with no correlation. I don't think Starbucks and the military are in cahoots there, okay? So the next thing I'm gonna do, it says to graph the data, okay? And so I'm gonna show you on Excel how to graph this data. So the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna pull my columns for 1 and 2. Okay, so I believe I chose teen birth rate. So let me find that again. So I'm going to highlight this column. So I pressed up here on the top of this column. So if I press S, it highlights the whole column. If I press R, it highlights that whole column. And then I'm going to Command C, right? And I'm going to copy it over, just like normal copy and paste. And then over here, I'm going to do Command V, and it's going to copy it all in there. Perfect. So the next set of data I want to use is SAT participation rate. So I'm going to select column W by pressing up top, Command C to copy it over. And in this other tab, I'm going to put it right next to it. Okay. And so what I tell you to do in the section that says how to make a scatter plot, we're going to highlight all the data points, and then we're going to go to Insert Chart. So I'm going to highlight from here all the way down to here, our data points. And I'm going to insert a chart. So this scatter plot pops up, and it's already labeled. And so we can see that the graph just kind of pops up there, and that's all we have to do for this first graph. Okay, so this first graph is done, right? So you're going to do that for all 6 graphs. So you're going to do that for data sets 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 2 and 4, 3 and 4, and you're going to do them in each separate tab. Okay, so it might be easier to do it this way. If you want to do it all on the main screen, you can, but I think this is the easiest way. So I just copied the data over, I highlighted it, I pressed Insert Chart, and my scatter plot immediately popped up. Okay. So once we have all 6 scatter plots, right, we can move on to the analysis portion. And this is where I'm going to have you calculate the average and the standard deviation. So you're going to go to an empty cell right below. So for example, this yellow cell, and I'm going to type in equals average, and it already pre-populates right here, right? So you can already see that the computer knows what you're thinking. So you're going to press that, press enter, and that's our answer. And we're going to do the same thing here. Perfect. Okay, so that's how you find the average. And then to find the standard deviation, we're going to do the same thing in a different cell with a different function. So instead of doing the average function, we're going to do equals ST DEV. And this one didn't pre-populate that time, but that's okay. So if we scroll up, we can see that we start here at A2, and we want to calculate from A2 all the way down to A52. So if you hold Shift, it populates as such. Okay, so that's our standard deviation. And we're going to do the same thing here. And now that we've just done standard deviation on the column next to us, it automatically pre-populates for this column. So we can just press enter. And those are our 2 standard deviations. Okay, so we're going to just put those in here, right? So you're going to record the mean and the standard deviation in this table. And then you're going to move on to calculate the correlation in between the 2 data sets. So this is going to help us determine if your predictions were right or wrong. So I'm going to go over to my data over here, and I'm just going to type over here equals coral. And so that stands for correlation. So I'm going to highlight my first column that I care about, because I care about teen birth rate in relation to SAT participation. So I highlight that first column, and then I put a comma because we're using two different data sets. And I highlight the second column, and I'm going to close that and press enter. And I get negative 0.42. Okay, so that's our correlation coefficient. So for our first one, my prediction was that it would be negative. My correlation coefficient that we just figured out was negative 0.42. Was my prediction correct? Yes. So for the actual graph, was it positive, negative, or no correlation? Well, our correlation coefficient told us that it is in fact a negative correlation, and you're gonna fill it in as such, okay? And once you've done that for all of your data sets and all of your tables, then you're just gonna answer some reflection questions, and that's it for summer work.